All right, I'm going to go through how to create different types of graphs using Google Sheets with you right now. First off, this table is what you would have seen for some of the earlier work. So you've got your Charles Dickens, Ernest Hemingway, Mark Twain, the tiers, the members. So when you were going through the competencies, you would have seen these, all right? This entire Google Sheet file is shared with you in the lessons. So I just wanted to make sure you had a copy of this to have it for your records. All right, what I'm actually going to use are these three tabs here on the bottom. So I'm going to look at making for you a bar graph, a line graph, and a pie graph using different sets of information. Now, keep in mind that different types of information will provide us with different types of graphs. So the first set of information we have here is based on some random general questions that were asked of a former class of mine. So the questions were, out of that class, how many students had blue eyes, how many had at least one brother, how many live in Dorchester, how many have a pet, and how many have brown hair. Now, these are 5 very different questions. They're 5 very different topics. They are not related to each other in any way. So the proper form of graph to make out of this type of information is a bar graph. So to make a bar graph out of this, I'm going to highlight the data that we are going to include in the graph. Now notice I am also including the 2 column titles. Now I will hit Insert, Chart, and you'll see up here, I also could have just hit this button here that says Insert Chart, and it will automatically generate a chart for me. Now, in some cases, it will actually produce the type of chart that I want. In other cases, as we'll see in a little bit, it won't. Google is usually pretty good at figuring out what you want, but sometimes it doesn't guess very well. In this case, it's pretty much nailed it. So we have some generic topics here. So the title it's just come up with is the 2 titles of the columns versus each other. You could leave that the same if you wanted to. It's not really a great title, so you might want to change it to Answers to General Questions in a BTT Classroom. All right, now if you look carefully at the chart, you can see on the left-hand side, there's a label. It says number of BTT students, and our numbers here look pretty good. At the bottom, you can see it has just the title is just questions, and really there's not much better that we can do from that. And underneath each bar, you have the questions that were answered. So overall, this looks pretty good. Now, if we wanted to change any of that information, we could over here. You would have learned in the previous lessons or in the previous video how to actually change titles for something. So I could change the title of the actual chart. You can see as I clicked on it, it actually switched to what I had changed it to up here. If I wanted to change the horizontal axis from questions to something else, I could change it there. If I want to change the color of some of the bars, I can do it here. Okay, so that's a basic bar graph. Now, all right, on this one we have some information from Southwestern Ontario temperatures from April 1st to April 7th of last year. So we've got the days of the week, Sunday through Saturday, and we've got some high temperatures and low temperatures. Now underneath we have some room for some additional information that we're going to put in afterwards. But for now, we're just going to look at graphing what we have here. So I'm going to highlight the data, and I'm going to click on Insert Chart, and you can see it has decided that we want another bar graph, which really does not make any sense given the information that we have here. So I'm going to click on this, and you can see under chart type, it says column chart. That's the suggested one. It doesn't really work. We're going to look at a line chart. We could look at a line chart or a smooth line chart. Since we have discrete pieces of information here, we're going to use the line chart. And we get this, and this looks a little bit more reasonable. Now we are going to want to change the title of this. So instead of high temp and low temp, we're going to change this to Southwestern Ontario temperatures from April 1st to 7th. All right, so that's a little bit more appropriate as a title. And we have 2 lines here. Now this line is blue, this line is red. I think red is probably more appropriate for our higher temperatures. So I'm going to click here and change the color. And then our lower temperatures, I think blue is probably more appropriate. So actually just swapping those two colors probably makes a little bit more sense. And if you look up here in the legend, you can see it actually changed the colors of the legend to go along with what changes we've just made. Now, on the bottom, you can see it says days of the week, and we've got our days of the week listed there. On the left, it has our temperatures, but it doesn't have a title on there. So let's look at, I'm just going to click on this. Let's look at our vertical axis title, and you can see it's blank. So if I type in temperature and hit enter, you can see now it includes that information there, and we actually should be including in here in degrees Celsius. Now I'm just going to put a C here because we don't know how to put in the degree symbol quickly, but that should be good enough for you to see. Okay, so this is temperature in degrees Celsius. We have our two lines here. We can now compare how those look during the course of a week. All right. Now, the other little piece of information we can get from this is down here. You can see it says highest high and lowest low. Well, I want to know what was the highest temperature out of all of these. So I can actually hit the equals sign on my keyboard, and you can see it actually comes up with a suggestion. And it's suggesting that what I want to find is the maximum of those numbers. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the highest number of those. So luckily, it actually gives me what I want. So I can highlight it with my cursor and click on it, and you can see it actually puts the formula in here for you. And if you hit enter, it tells you the highest high was an 8. And then over here, I'm going to want the lowest low. So I want to know what the lowest temperature was of all of these. So I'm going to hit equal sign again, and you can see its suggestion is minimum of those pieces of information, which is, again, exactly what I want. So I click on that, I hit enter, and you can see it gives me that the low was -4. All right. Now, if I wanted to also include what was the lowest high temperature or the highest low temperature, I could put those in there too, but that's not really what we're looking for. We're just looking for the highest high and the lowest low. All right. So then our last graph we're going to make is a pie graph. So going back to the statistics from the classroom, looking at who had brown hair, blue or brown eyes, blue eyes, or green eyes, we can use this data to find that out. So highlight chart, and you can see once again Google has figured out, based on the context of what this is, it knows that we're actually looking to make a pie chart. Now the colors here don't quite match. Brown is blue, blue is red, green is yellow, so we can always go in and change that. So if we click on this, click on the color, we can change that to brown, we can change this to blue, and we can change that to green, and then it actually matches with what we're looking at. We do still have to change the title to make it more appropriate. So we can say it's the eye color of students in BTT. And there we go. So there's our graph. Now the only final piece of information is here. Well, what happens if we want to know how many students there were? Well, click on that cell. If we hit equals, you can see once again, it's figured out that we want to add those up. So we click on sum, hit enter, and it tells us that we have 18 students total in that class. All right, so hopefully you were following along as I went through that. If you need to pause this and go back at any point, please make sure you do that, and make sure you have a good understanding of what we've just done there, okay?